Good morning. Welcome wherever you are in the world. So, a big welcome to all of you. My name is Laura, and I'm delighted that you are joining us for today's ESPC community webinar. Today, I am joined by Joel Rodriguez, who will talk to you guys about how to make your first PnP contribution. We love hearing what you guys have to say, so remember to join in on the conversation about today's webinar and more on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is #ESPC23. Tweet us at us and tell us what you guys learned. Don't forget to check out our resource centre, which is updated daily with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars and how-to videos. You can access and view the resource centre by visiting our website sharepointeurope.com and clicking the content tab at the top. Don't let the learning stop here. Continue to keep up and stay ahead by joining us for our next webinar, which is a series of 2 mini webinars as part of Power Platform Week, which occurs next week, titled Copilot in Power Pages and Catalyzing Integration Excellence, Postman and Power Automate Mastery. These webinars will take place on Monday, September 11th from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. CEST. For more information on Power Platform Week, check out www.sharepointeurope.com/Power Platform Week. ESPC is fast approaching. If you are looking for a vibrant Microsoft 365 and Azure conference that is jam-packed with groundbreaking insights, visionary keynotes, hands-on workshops, and exciting networking opportunities, then it is time for you to secure your early bird tickets for ESPC. But why should you attend ESPC? You can receive valuable insights by attending a variety of session types across the biggest Microsoft 365 and Azure topics, catering from levels 100 through to 400. Hear from Microsoft product team members, regional directors, MVPs, MCMs, and independent experts. ESPC is also a great way to build your professional network and meet like-minded people from across the globe. You can share and receive advice from fellow attendees, but also from a very friendly, helpful speakers. As well as that, ESPC helps you to keep up and get ahead with the product developments and practices that matter the most. Find new and better ways of working to bring new energy and effectiveness to your work. Expect the latest news straight from Ignite. Invest in your team, invest in yourself, and invest in your career by learning new skills or mastering current ones at ESPC. Book before September 29th to avail of our early bird pricing and our special team discounts. Again, visit sharepointeurope.com/pricing to secure your tickets. Last June, over 1,200 Power Platform professionals gathered in Dublin for the European Power Platform Conference 2023. Check out our amazing showreel video full of conference highlights from Dublin. Next year, we are taking the European Power Platform Conference to Brussels. Join over 1,500 of your professional peers and expect world-class expert guidance to help you succeed in your projects and career. And of course, not to forget an unforgettable experience in the beautiful city of Brussels. Register your interest for the European Power Platform Conference 2024 in Brussels at sharepointeurope.com/Power Platform Conference. So after the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any question that you might have into the questions window. Questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will also be recorded and added to the Resource Centre, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to today's webinar presenter, Joel. Hello, Joel.
Hello, everyone. Let me show my screen. Can you see my slides?
It's just taken a second, I think, to come up there.
Let me try again. Is it showing already?
No, not yet.
One moment. Let me stop and start this.
Perfect, I can see it there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it took a while. So hello, everyone. So this session will cover a simple way to make contributions to the PnP Reusable Controls is aimed at people that haven't contributed or just started contributing recently, that may be following a process that may be a little bit complicated sometimes, or they may not have enough knowledge to explore what options are available and come up with a simple process to make contributions. And those processes can sometimes get in the way of people helping more. Of course, if you are a contributor already to the PnP Reusable Controls or any other open source controls, there could be things that you could review that you may be doing in a different way that may be easier this way, but the main focus is really beginners and try to get them some support. We'll also go through a very brief introduction of the controls before we go into the contribution side of things. So my name is João Rodrigues. I'm a SharePoint M365 developer. I work mainly with Storm Technology, a company based in Ireland, a Microsoft partner, providing Microsoft technology services. I'm a Microsoft MVP on M365 development. Been doing SharePoint since I started working more than 10 years ago. I'm one of the PnP Controls maintainer. There's 3 more people at the moment. You can follow me on Twitter, well, X, at Joel FM Rodriguez. My LinkedIn also the same alias, Joel FM Rodriguez in the URL, or my blog, m365-dev.com. The agenda for today, like I mentioned, we are going to have very quick introduction of the PnP controls and property controls. So there are 2 types of controls that fall under the same, I guess you can call it, umbrella. How you can help, the step-by-step guide for the first contribution. This is how I do it. This is the simplest process I found. Hopefully you can learn something there that may help you. And also, finally, a question that I get a lot is how to develop or extend the controls together with your own solutions. So we sometimes get people that contribute, they make the changes on the solution, but they are not aware that it's extremely easy to connect the PnP controls locally to your own solution and develop both solutions in parallel. I will show you this takes one command. So the PnP reusable controls are there to basically avoid people having to reinvent the wheel every time you have new projects. There are a lot of controls there that you can reuse. So there is a lot of advantages that the controls offer you. So first of all, they are open source. Everyone likes free stuff, I guess. Not having to go to your manager, try to justify why you want to pay for a library of components. Going in some companies that can take a long time, and people having to sign off on risks and things like that, or agree prices. It's widely open by the widely used by the community. The source code is open. You can review anything that is there before you use it if you want to. Is highly configurable. So the components that we have been developed and extended over years by many people to fit their scenarios, and people contribute every time, or there's a lot of people contributing with new scenarios, support for new scenarios for configuration. They meet a lot of project requirements for the SharePoint and M365 space, because a lot of companies end up having the same sort of requirements depending on things like business area, where they operate, and so on. They offer a rich user experience, more or less aligned with M365. This is one of the aims. It's not always the case, but it's very often the case. Most of the controls use Fluent UI as well, so that itself gives them a look and feel aligned with the products. They can be used for the content of web parts, property panes, extensions, anything SPFX really, because you can have the React controls for content, not if you're doing a Viva extension, but and you can get anything that has a property pane, you can stick the property controls there. They are very simple to use and extend. There is documentation. A lot of the controls, you can just go on the documentation, copy and paste the examples into your code and slightly tweak the properties for what you need. The reusable React controls, I just put some examples there. You can see things like taxonomy on the top right corner. We have a list view, some of the popular ones. The placeholder is just a default control that you can show when your web part misses configuration of some other things. You have list pickers, file uploads, you have themes, lots of stuff there. So give them a go if you don't know the controls yet. If you are completely new to these, check the website or just go on your favorite search engine and look for PnP Reusable Controls. You will easily find both repositories. For the property pane, so just one thing, this is just a very short example. We have a lot more than this. The same for the property controls, things like list picker, collection data. This is really good control. It lets you have tabular data into the properties of a web part, which saves within the web part information. So when the page loads, the data is already there. Icon pickers, again, taxonomy controls, date pickers, lists, view pickers, item pickers. There's a lot of stuff there. Give them a review. It's really worth. And the collection of controls keeps growing over time. So every now and then, I invite you to go and check if there is something new or follow the releases that we show on the community calls and even on social media. So how can you help? We need any help we can get. And this is basically an open project. Anyone contribute, and please do. Is fully maintained by the community members for the community. There is no one being paid to work on it. Everyone works on their own time and pace, and everyone can join. We don't require any level of expertise. You don't need to be a very experienced SharePoint framework developer or React developer to join. For smaller contributions, in some cases, you don't even need to know that much. If you just want to add a property to them in a SharePoint framework SPFX solution type. So you would know what you were doing by then, I assume. That's why I listed below basic knowledge of SPFX and React, which would be desirable, but this is only for you to find your way around very easily. And we have high tolerance for different code patterns. what we ask is that if you are making changes to one component or one control, you try to align with what is there. Don't try to rewrite the whole thing just because you don't like how it's done, or you try to format everything in a different way because you prefer that way. Please respect what the others did. Try to align. If you are building your own new control, submitting a contribution with a brand new control, then that's up to you. Of course, try to be sensible, but you can use your own coding standards for that. No one will ask you to rewrite everything. Ways to help. The most common ones is people creating issues when they test the controls or submitting suggestions for improvements or new features. Just go on the issues list, record a new item. That's a good starting point. If you can help with fixing bugs, your own or someone else's bugs, improvements, new features, or even documentation, we would love pull requests. Help with discussions is also very appreciated, especially on ways to implement things, what would work, what wouldn't for people. We don't want to do anything that works for us, but then most people will just not find it useful. That's just a waste of everyone's time. We want to know what people need so we can help and help you contribute as well. And again, help with issues created by others. People try to focus mostly on the things they find, but it's really appreciated if, and there is a lot of people that actually do this already, that go and open issues, try to recreate issues, try to suggest fixes. That helps a lot, not only to keep the threads active, but sometimes by the time I go, or one of the other maintainers go to an issue, is already responded and closed. So that is a very good help to us and to everyone in the community. So how to make your first contribution? The first thing I suggest, which would be a bit obvious, of course, is to go to the information page of the controls. There is a guide section, and there are some information there, how you can contribute, how you can set up your environment with the controls, and how to submit a pull request. I will try to cover a little bit of all of this in a demo shortly after we go through some slides. But I will advise to go there as a starting point. If you are a contributor and for some reason things change and things don't work for you anymore, maybe the contribution guidelines changed, so double check as well. It's good if you are doing frequent contributions, it's also a good idea to frequently change if some guidance was updated. So this is a hierarchy of repositories in Git. So the solutions or the PnP controls are two repositories in GitHub. So I have this slide shows the hierarchy for one repository. It will be the same for any other repository in GitHub, really. So we have the original repository at the top, which is the one controlled by the PnP account. We have remote repositories. This is copies of the original repository. Sorry if you are aware of how all of this works. You probably won't learn anything, but I think it is a good point to clarify this hierarchy, because often we get questions from experienced people which don't fully understand how this works. So you have your fork, which is your remote copy of the original repository. And finally, you have your local repository. So we are looking at the left side here. You have your local repository, which is the copy of the code that is in your machine. So we basically dealing with three repositories. And from this main original repository, there can be lots of other person's forks. that will then clone the repositories locally, or the same repository can be cloned by multiple people as well. So this can be very complex, but from your point of view, all you need to understand is there is this PnP controls, and this is locked for you. You cannot make changes directly to these controls. And you need to be very careful about this, because if you try to make changes, you get frustrated because you will get blocked by GitHub, not allowing you to make the changes to permissions. So you can make can you hear me? I got a notification saying the audio was lost. Okay, I assume so. I will carry on. So your remote repository is the one that will receive the changes that you make locally. So you make changes locally, you push the changes to your fork, which is your remote repository in GitHub, and from there you create a pull request to push changes into the PnP controls. So if we move to the next slide, how you set up a remote repository. So first things first, you go into the PnP original repository, which you can see from the logo that shows on the left, and the account on the URL that will show PnP. And you go there and click fork. So when you click fork, that will show you a quick animation for a moment while it's copying the code and is creating a repository for you. And you will see something like this. So in my case, I can see a new repository with the exact same name under my account. So you can see here we have Parker from PnP, that's my picture. And it shows that it was forked from, and he has a link to the original repository. If or every time you need to make any contribution, it's always good to go. If you just forked, you will have this immediate latest version. But over time, there are contributions to the original repository. So you need to go to GitHub. You can do this via many ways. I think this is probably the easiest for starters. From Git, you select which branch you want to sync. In this case, you can see, for example, master was more than 2,000 commits behind the PnP repository. You click on sync fork. It shows up a dialog. You click update branch, and you can see we went from 909 commits to almost 3,000. So this, if we go back one slide, oops, basically pushes all the changes that are here that are not in your fork to your fork. This is very important when you make contributions, because you want to always start your code from the latest version. Otherwise, you may turn into a nightmare. You may get lots of conflicts. So always make sure you do that. This is the easiest way, I think, to do it. As you get used to it, you can do it from adding the connection yourself between the two repositories and managing that all by yourself. But to be honest, it doesn't have any value. You can just go on GitHub and do it by yourself. Once your code is fully updated, click the clone button, and then you can choose to clone from command line or GitHub Desktop, Visual Studio, whatever. I find it very easy to do via GitHub Desktop or command line. This is probably one of the few commands I use via the command line for Git. I just go git clone, copy this URL and paste it there. Or if you click GitHub Desktop, it will just let you choose the folder. So super simple. And then what this will do, you will create the third copy of the code into your machine. So now you have the 3 hierarchy levels set up, one on your machine, one on GitHub, and the original PnP repository. From there, I recommend that you try to validate and build a solution so you can start making changes from a point where you know it works. The next thing we're gonna do when you're making contributions is working with branches. Visual Studio Code is my recommendation for that. There is extremely simple ways to do it through the UI in VS Code. You probably don't even need any Git commands from the basic operations. I'm not saying you shouldn't learn them, you probably should, but you can get away with doing a lot without even knowing these exact commands going on behind the scenes. So to sync a branch, so in this, you can see on this image, here we are working on the dev branch, and VS Code will show you at the bottom if it's connected and in the right folder. If you are working on the project root folder, it will show that you're working on the dev branch. In this case, to sync, all you need to do is press that button. You will push any changes that you have committed on your locally to GitHub, to your repository in GitHub, and you will we'll pull first any changes that are on GitHub that you don't have here. So for example, if you synced the changes from the original PnP, then you will get them here, and then finally we'll push everything that is here and not on GitHub to your GitHub repository. The same thing for commit. There is one of the options on the left for the source control changes. You can compare anything, put a commit message there, commit. You don't need to go on command line to do that and type a message. Just from here, do it straight away. You can even push, I think is shift and shift to return, and it commits and pushes straight away. The same thing for creating branches. If you click on the branch name, you can switch to any branch that you have, or create a new one, or create from a base branch. It's extremely simple. If you are starting, this is my opinion by far the easiest way. It will get you away from lots of command line things that if you are not used to it, it will be a bit of a challenge to figure your way around. So the process for making contributions, if we are going to use the same hierarchy schema that we looked at it a few slides back with the 3 repositories, and we're going to focus only on the left side. Like I mentioned, before you start, always sync your fork. Even so, if you forget to do that, try to do it as soon as possible. If you get into conflicts, then you will know what I'm talking about. Probably the best way is to start from a new branch and then copy your changes into a new clean branch that has all your changes added after you got all the updates. Once you sync your changes on GitHub, in your GitHub repository, so your fork, always sync locally as well. So you have to sync twice, but keep in mind, don't forget to do this. So sync this fork and then sync your local copy from here. It's the process you should always do. Get the changes from the top to the middle layer and then to your working layer. Again, if you're making if you can see a lot of changes coming through, probably worth double checking that everything still works before you start making your changes, because it could happen, it doesn't happen often, but it could happen that we merged a pull request that was not properly tested for some reason, and there is an issue and we broke your build or something, and you want to spot that straight away before you start adding changes and then get into the question, did I break the build? Was it already broken? So all that could be avoided if you can validate at the start that everything works as is. So from there, get the latest from the dev branch, and then the next thing before you start doing any work is create a new branch, always. Use dev as a reference, create a new branch, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's your naming convention. The branch will be based on your remote repository and your local copy. It will never go to PnP controls, so we don't care about the name you give to it. And then make all the changes on that branch. When the changes are done, make sure everything is committed, and we are going to push things up the hierarchy. So the first thing after you commit is sync or push the changes to your local fork, sorry, to your fork in GitHub. And I lost my mouse here. So yeah, to the middle layer. From there, you can then create a pull request to the PnP controls. This will be done. There is ways to do that. I think the easiest is by far going on GitHub website, and from there you can just follow the steps to create a pull request. Depending on, if you go there after pushing the changes, you can often even see a little banner at the top to create a pull request. Once the pull request is created, the work is not finished. So the maintainers may or may not get back to you with questions or suggestions for updates. Please keep engaging with them until everything is reviewed and accepted and the pull request is merged. Sometimes there are no questions and you get a notification once it's merged. Sometimes we ask for small changes. Most of the time it's just small changes, to be honest. So once the code is merged, your changes will be in the PnP controls repository. Do you have those changes in your repositories? No, you have them in your branch. And what I recommend that you do after that is you go on your repository, you press the sync button again, and then locally you sync again from your remote repository. We are basically pushing down the changes. We are pushing the changes down the hierarchy back to your local repository, but this time we are syncing the dev branch. It means that you will end up with a dev branch that is an exact copy of the PnP controls. From that point, you can work on your next contribution. You could also do contributions in parallel, but you get a clean start again. Even if you are doing another contribution, once you have all the changes on your dev branch locally, everything came down the hierarchy, then pull the changes into your branch or any branches you may be working on already, so everything is updated. Finally, you can delete the branches that had your original changes, both on your local copy and your fork. You can leave them if you want, it's your code, but they are not needed at that point, so you can do some cleanup if you want. That's just a suggestion at this point. They won't cause any harm, but you will keep your code a bit more tidy up. So this is just a step-by-step summary of the points we just looked at. So I'm just moving forward. You may find this useful if you look at the slides later. I'm conscious of time, so I need to get a bit ready for the demo. So let's look at the demo. So like I mentioned, I went on Google, I looked for the PnP controls, and we are going to use the React controls as an example. Let me just make sure I'm sharing my screen. So the first thing we're going to do is to fork my repository. Moment. So if I click fork, I already have a fork of this repository. If you don't, you will just see an animation here for a moment. It doesn't take a while, maybe a minute or even less. And this will create a fork. When you go to that fork, I can now see that now I'm on my own repository. If we go back, I was in PnP, and my fork, which is that one, is now under my GitHub account. From here, I can clone, go on the code, GitHub desktop. Yeah. Again, this you could use command line for that if you don't use GitHub desktop. Don't change the repository URL. It picks up the right URL by default. This is the local path. So I'm going to add it to WSL, but this could be a Windows folder. Yeah, that's fine. And clone. So this is, whoops. If I go on this folder, I can see that it's just having this folder now. So give it just a moment. Okay, now if we on WSL here in the command line, I'm just going to open the project. So you can see I'm on the master branch. If I open VS Code, this is just, I'm working in WSL. If you work on Windows, it would be similar. You can just right click on the folder, open with VS Code, whatever. So I can see the solution here. I have the master branch, and I'm going to switch to dev. One thing I know is I only have a few controls, because if I go on my dev branch, you can see here I'm nearly 3,000 commits behind, because this branch was never synced with the main repository, and this my fork, in this case the dev branch, is very old. So I'm going to sync the fork. So update branch, and now I have, let me refresh. There you go. So now I have a dev branch that is all up to date. If I go on VS Code, I can still see that we only have a few bunch of controls in the solution, because this is a very old version. If I now sync my local branch with my repository in GitHub, remember there hasn't been any command line so far. We're just using the sync tools that we have available. That's up to date. And this was very easy. So one thing I want to do now is npm install, so I get this out of the way. And making sure that everything works. So while it's installing, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find I'm actually going to do a pull request. I'm going on the documentation. So docs, there is a docs folder, controls, and I'm gonna pick one of the controls. Yeah, that will do. So as you can see, this is just a markdown file complaining that it needs an empty space between lines. Just going to add. This doesn't really add any value, but it doesn't really matter. It will do. I just want to add a change here. So if I save this file, I don't need to compile the solution in this case, because I'm only changing a markdown file, adding a few empty spaces. And if we click here on the source control, I can see that this file has changed. Hopefully this is not new to you, but you can see everything that has changed on that file. Happy with that. Formatted file. Just adding a comment on the commit. Oops, I was almost doing a mistake here. So I'm still making changes on dev, which is wrong. So create new branch. Okay, I'm just going to create a branch called Update Talks Webinar Demo. Okay, so now I'm on that branch. And you can see that Visual Studio even tells you that the branch was never published. So I can go ahead and commit this change to my new branch. No, don't do this to me. Oh, sorry. I know what's going on. I have an issue with my setup and it complains about this folder. So I just deleted one integration that we have temporarily, so I'm not committing that. I'm committing only my documentation change, and now it lets me commit. It's just a pre-commit integration that we have that is causing issues at my end. So I've committed my changes. You can even see on the commits updated doc file. This hasn't been pushed. So publish branch to my origin, which is my GitHub account and my fork. You can see by the URL. So you have the choice to try to publish straight to the original repo, and if I select the PnP repo, it will just fail. So I'm going to push to the second layer that we saw on that diagram. If I now go again on GitHub, you can see I can see that straight away that there was a new branch. He asked me if I want to do a pull request. Yes, I want. And in this case, we are going to do a pull request from my repository, from my new branch to the PnP controls. You can see here it shows PnP. And here I need to choose the dev branch. So each repository might have its own guidelines. Most of the time you will find that dev branches are the ones you need to create pull requests for. But if you are contributing to an open source project, always go and check which one you should be targeting. I can say this is just a bug fix. I don't have a bug number for this. If we had, we could go at the number here, and it will resolve. Describe what you are doing. Docs. Try to provide as much information as you can in a sensible amount. Don't add 3 pages. I'm just going to keep this short for the demo and then create pull request. So all this is done ready for review. Then someone will come here, review the pull request for you. You can see exactly what is being marked as changing. Double check that this is what you intended to check. Often people submit changes that they did not intend, and then they have to update the pull request. If you need to update the pull request at this point, all you have to do, because your branch is already connected to a pull request, is make a change and commit and push those changes to the second layer, to the remote repository. That will automatically update the pull request. So any changes to that branch will immediately reflect on the pull request. So that's quite easy. If you have feedback on a pull request to make changes, you can keep the same branch, make the changes, commit, push, and that's it. You don't need to do anything else. Because I'm one of the maintainers, I'm now going to merge this pull request. Okay, so now my changes made it to the PnP repository. From here, you can delete your branch on the fork of the repository, so your own copy of the PnP controls in GitHub, or you can go it directly from the UI, but I most of the time do it from here. I like to keep things tidy in terms of branches. Not that I remember all the time, but I suggest you do. Pull request is closed, but your dev branch does not yet have the changes. So if you now go again to your fork of the PnP controls, you can even go from here. So again, in my copy, if I now go to dev, 2 commits behind, oops, again sync, and you can see that if we go to commits, we can see the formatting change is now on our own copy. So I still need this change on my local copy of the branch. So if I go here, don't need this branch anymore, but I can ignore it for now. Switch to dev, and you can see that, oops. Okay, and I click the button. Yeah, you can see the changes are already here. We have the empty space between the headers and the block of codes. So for me, this is a very simple process to make contributions. Always make sure that you do the sync of the branches. There is no commands involved in the past, so this option here, sync fork, was added probably a year ago or so on GitHub. For me, it was a very, very good addition. One of the best features they introduced recently, in my opinion, to facilitate people that is new to this process. The other alternative was to go and create upstream branches. It was a bit of a few commands involved, and it wasn't that simple. If you did it a few times, yes, it was always the same, but it wouldn't be one thing you would do very often. And every time I had to do it, I would probably go and refer to a blog post or something and copy paste the commands from there. We don't need that anymore. No more commands involved, just sync then. And then go back to VS Code, sync again, all done. If we go back to our session, slides. So the other thing I wanted to cover, and conscious we only have 10 minutes, so I need to, second. Oh, yeah, that will do. So the other thing I wanted to cover is local development with your own SPFX solutions. So you might have PnP controls that do a lot. They might not do exactly what you need, and you need to add a new property. You have to extend something, change something. The SPFX controls are the PnP controls are themselves an SPFX solution. So anything you know about SPFX applies to the React controls and property controls. They both SPFX solutions. They work as you know. They can the React controls. You can add a test web part. They have a web part or a few extensions you can add to the workbench, to sites to test. But sometimes that's not enough to test your use case. The only thing you have to do really is link them to your project. So instead of installing them via npm, you can just do a local link to the project. And from there, any changes you make to the controls immediately reflect on your project. So this can be done with npm link. There are other ways to do it. I find this super easy, npm link and then the path to the location where your solution is. Where the PnP controls are, and you do this npm link from the root folder of your solution. And for making changes to the controls, you would follow the exact same process. Sync to make sure you have the latest version. Create a new branch, work there, make the changes you need. If the changes are of benefits to others, please consider doing a pull request at the end. If it's something very specific to you, maybe there is no need for a PR there, and probably keep things at your side only. But most of the time, I'm fairly confident it would be things that others could reuse. So let's do a quick demo on that. So you may remember we cloned the code. I created an SPFX sample solution here already before the call, and we have the SPFX controls React repository here as well in the same subfolder. So I'm going, we know we synced the branches already. I'm going to create a new branch for this. I'm going to call it feature my business project. Doesn't matter, just so you know, this is something I'm doing for a change I'm doing for work. And here I'm going to pick up the placeholder control, and the change we are going to make is add a new property. We're not going to do anything with it. We're just going to add a new property. So the first thing I need to do is I need to build a solution. Because we haven't done that yet, make sure everything works. And on this new tab, in the command line, I have my own solution here. This is taking a moment. This is a very quick demo, so all fine. So now I need to go on my own SPFX solution, and I'm going to link the PnP controls. So like I mentioned, npm link, and then because we were side by side, I just want to go back one level. SPFX control React. Wait a moment, and so when I do this, my new project will get access to all the controls in the same way as if you have installed the package from npm. So in my sample solution, that's this one here, all I did was I went on the documentation, copied a placeholder command, import command for the placeholder control. So you can see that nothing changes. I'm still importing from @PnP SPFX controls React. I don't have this package installed here, so it's definitely coming through the link. I imported or basically added the placeholder control at the bottom, and we can even see that. No, we don't. 1 second. So I think I need to do gulp bundle. Moment. Oops. So this is nearly there. So we're doing gulp bundle on the controls to get all the things generated. As you can see, it's a very large solution. So now if I go to my project, I should be able to see, why are you not giving me the definitions? Okay, I'm not sure what. 1 second, let me reopen this. So we should be able to see all the properties from the placeholder component here. I'm not sure why they're not. Oh, there you go. So these are the normal standard properties we can have for the placeholder control. So now if I go back to the control itself, I'm just going to add a new property. Gonna call it PSPC as prop, and just having a small description. If I just now redo that, so rebuilding the property controls, and if I go on my solution, we should have any moment once the properties are refreshed.
Sorry, Joel, your audio seems to have dropped there.
Component you had any new properties, changes, you can see them reflected straight away in your projects. Once you are done, if you create a pull request and changes get approved, all you have to do from that point is install the dependency from npm. You don't need to change anything on your code. Everything will work the same. All the imports, everything will be the same. This is basically it. I'm just going to quickly add a final note there. I'm sorry for the time for questions. So always check the contributing guidelines and code of conduct if available. Please be patient and positive when interacting with other members of the community. No one is being paid for this work. And we try to do our best. And I guarantee you will always learn something and improve your skills when you get involved in this type of projects. We love any PRs, contributions of any kind, new controls, features, bug fixes, documentation, anything, even if it's just a spelling mistake. Feel free to submit PRs and make things better. Thank you. Now, I don't know if we have any minutes for questions.
Brilliant. Thanks a million, Joel, for a great presentation and some great demos. So we'll just get into the questions and answer session now. We just have a couple of minutes. So should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to type it into the questions window now. So there's just one question in here, and someone wants to know if you could share some best practices for making changes to the reusable controls code base and maintaining code quality.
I think we went through the process through the session. I don't know if the question came before we went into that process or not. In terms of maintaining code, there is a lot of effort try to maintain code. Some of the code has been developed years ago and has been maintained in parts, sometimes not everything. There is a lot of effort to update all the dependencies, things like we have a lot of controls that are class components, not functional components in React. We are not doing a full rewrite of those, at least at this point. They work. It's an external solution that you had. You would not, they still work in functional components as one example. But any improvements or maintenance work will be appreciated. It is a non-stop effort maintaining all of it because of the size of the solution.
Brilliant. Thanks a
any
million.
Other question?
That seems to be all the questions that we have in here today. So we might just wrap up the Q&A session there. But on behalf of the ESPC community, I just want to extend a huge thank you to you again, Joel, for taking the time to carry out this webinar today. We really do appreciate it. So that is the end of today's webinar. You can find this webinar and more at sharepointeurope.com/resource center. That is it for today, folks. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. Take care, and we hope that you'll join us again for more learning. Bye for now.
Thank you.